Since childhood, I have been prey to the force of a horrible melancholy, the depth of which finds its true expression in the corresponding ability to hide it under apparent serenity and desire to live. People understand me so little that they do not even understand when I complain of being misunderstood. What I really need is to get clear about what I must do, not what I must know. It is perfectly true, as philosophers say, that life must be understood backwards, but they forget the other proposition, that it must be lived forwards. No one in the world can tell you why you exist, but since you are here, work to give meaning to your existence. Have you ever felt that strange anxiety before having to make an important decision? That feeling is not just fear, it is something much deeper. And today, I will reveal the reason, thanks to Kierkegaard. Kierkegaard invites us to make a leap that can change everything in our lives. And at the end of the video, you will understand why this idea is still more relevant today than ever. Kierkegaard grew up in a deeply religious environment and context. He was very critical of the dominant Christian ideology of the time. He engaged in various ideological investigations, which would become the starting point of existentialism. From his early youth, he cultivated a painful sense of guilt, which would then be the starting point of all his philosophical reflection, centered on the themes of anxiety, despair, and faith. Kierkegaard was interested in only one thing: how can we live an authentic life? He believed that most people live asleep following the crowd, but only by facing anxiety and taking the leap of faith can we discover who we really are. Anxiety never disappears, but it is precisely through it that man becomes aware of himself. That is, when anxiety becomes a driver of awareness and personal growth. Anxiety is like a disease that does not lead to death, but from which one never fully recovers. This phrase conveys the idea of a permanent and constant condition that accompanies existence. Only those who accept to face anxiety can truly become themselves. Anxiety is the door through which one passes to reach faith. Anxiety is not something that man chooses, but something that arises from the very fact of being free. Anxiety, for Kierkegaard, is not fear. Fear has a precise object, anguish does not. Anxiety is the dizziness of freedom. It is the moment in which you realize that you are free to choose, and this freedom makes you tremble. The human condition is paradoxical. To exist means to be able to choose, indeed to be a possibility. But this does not constitute man's wealth, but rather his misery. His freedom of choice does not represent his greatness, but his permanent drama. In fact, he is always faced with the alternative of a possibility that yes and a possibility that no, without possessing any criteria for choosing. And he gropes in the dark, in an unstable position, in permanent indecision, without being able to orient his life intentionally in one direction or the other. Man reaches a moment when he no longer has the freedom of choice, not because he has chosen, but because he has not done so, which can also be expressed in this way, because others have chosen for him, because he has lost himself. Anxiety may be compared with dizziness. He whose eye happens to look down into the yawning abyss becomes dizzy. But what is the reason for this? It is just as much in his own eyes as in the abyss. Hence, anxiety is the dizziness of freedom. Let's take an example. Imagine you are on the edge of a cliff. Fear is the feeling that you might fall involuntarily, something you would try to avoid. Anxiety, on the other hand, is the awareness that you could also choose to jump. It is not only the fear of losing control, but the recognition of your freedom of choice. And this is where Kierkegaard's key concept comes into play: the leap of faith. The leap is not an irrational or casual act, but a conscious and courageous decision. It is the moment when you stop looking for absolute, rational, and predictable certainties and accept uncertainty as an essential part of life. For Kierkegaard, this leap is the passage from the ethical stage to the religious stage, a leap that only the individual can make, taking full responsibility for his own existence. For Kierkegaard, this sensation is fundamental. If you face it, you get closer to your authenticity. If you avoid it, you take refuge in the impersonal self, a bit like Heidegger. Anxiety arises whenever one is faced with possibility, because every possibility is also the possibility of nothingness. In the innermost heart, in the most secret of happiness, dwells anxiety, which is despair. This is the place dearest to despair, the one it prefers of all, deep within happiness. For Kierkegaard, those who try to find everything with logic will never live authentically. To believe is not a rational decision. It is a leap into the unknown. Faith begins precisely where thinking leaves off. The leap is the act of taking responsibility for your existence. Practical example: when you leave a secure job to pursue your passion, you are taking a leap of faith. At the moment of decision, faith becomes a guide that pushes us towards the unknown, accepting uncertainty as an inevitable companion on our personal journey. For Kierkegaard, there is also a form of anxiety taken to the extreme, which emerges when the individual clashes with the impossibility of realizing his own authenticity. This is despair. The most common form of despair is not being who you are. Doubt is the despair of thought. Despair is the doubt of personality, and that is why I care so much about the determination of choice. To doubt requires talent, but to despair requires none at all. How absurd men are! They never use the liberties they have. They demand those they do not have. They have freedom of thought. They demand freedom of speech. Kierkegaard defines faith as paradox, by which the particular is higher than the universal. This paradox leads Abraham, by virtue of the absurd, to the plane of faith. Maybe you too have felt anxiety at some point in your life. Maybe you felt it before making an important choice. Kierkegaard tells us that that feeling is not a mistake, but a sign that you are alive and are facing your existence authentically. His reflections challenge us to look inside ourselves, to recognize anxiety as part of our journey, and to take the leap of faith. An invitation to live fully without fear of uncertainty. Thanks for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, leave a like and share your thoughts in the comments. And if you haven't already, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next trips into the world of philosophy. See you soon.